Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Mose McGunder was a money-making wonder on the search for something new. When he saw the fashion was a ragtime passion, he declared, here's what I'll do. If the folks are crazy for that syncopation hazy, well, I'll give them what...
Hello and welcome to Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits. No change there. Well, I'm glad you've come back because this is the second part of our fabulous interview with the voice of Hollywood, the ghostess with the mostess, Marni Nixon, who's done so very, very much. And today you'll be hearing more about her work with My Fair Lady and Audrey Hepburn, right the way through to her modern career and her stage appearances, funnily enough, including in My Fair Lady on several occasions, playing different roles, as well as being one of the rare people who's had a public hug from Stephen Sondheim. Well, I'm not going to waste your time or mine before we get into the second part of that interview, but we'll introduce it with a very short medley of one or two songs that she's sung from several of her albums dedicated to Jerome Kern and George Gershwin as part of the Great American Songbook. And just listen to the clarity of her voice. The legendary Marni Nixon.
You got me going, what you gonna do? Is it up to me? Is it up to you? What kind of game is this we've begun? Was it done just for fun? We have necked till I'm wrecked. Won't you tell me what you expect? Is this to be a case of kiss and never tell? Folly and farewell. A Babbitt met a bromide on the avenue one day and held a conversation in their own peculiar way. They both were solid citizens, they both had been around, and as they spoke you clearly saw their feet were on the ground. Hello, how are you? How's the folks? What's new? I'm great, that's good. Ha ha, knock wood. Well, well, what say?
musical talk. What was the working relationship with Audrey Hepburn like, bearing in mind you'd had two very different ways of working with Deborah Kerr and Natalie Wood? How was that for you?
Well, for Audrey Hepburn, it was, she had begrudgingly accepted the fact that I was there to help her do whatever was needed. She also thought that she could sing more of it than she ended up doing. She kept, she was taking voice lessons, and she allowed me to be at her voice lessons. I was present every day at her voice lessons to hear her practice and to see what she was doing with her voice teacher, and so I could get really acquainted with her voice and how she was being coached. Then she would go to the soundstage and record certain things that she thought she could do, and then she would go back and re-record them as she learned to do them better. She thought, hoping that she could have a lot of her voice in the movie. And indeed, when she recorded Wouldn't It Be Loverly, that was recorded to her own track. And then the rest was then by that time had been decided was going to be all me, except for a few of the lead-ins to the verses and stuff. But Wouldn't It Be Loverly, she recorded to her own track, and then they told her afterwards that they were going to throw that out, and I was going to dub from the movie then. So then I went back and I had to go to earphones again, like we had done with Natalie Wood, and I had to then put in my own voice. It was just, I hear nowadays they have a recording of Audrey Hepburn actually record her recording of it, her original recording, and they play it, and you can hear, of course, the difference.
I should say.
But it wasn't bad, but I think that they also thought that by the time she got to be a lady, that she could have a more refined voice, which could be me, but that there was too much of a jump between, her gutter snipe voice and my voice. They didn't want to kind of make it that obvious. So they decided it was much better to have me do it, like she would have done it, but with the timbre of my voice. So that they went back and put me into everything. But it was planned, not like in The King and I. It was planned that I would do a lot of the other things even beforehand. But she worked very hard at trying to perfect her voice, and she was a lovely person. She was very gracious.
Which is good.
Yes, it helped.
She had a sweet voice, I think, but you have a great voice, and I think that must be the difference, particularly as once again, it helps make it a great film.
Well, her voice is not the kind of voice that you would use as a music theater sound. I mean, it was she had a mezzo sound. It was much darker than mine, but it was very fuzzy, and mine is pointed and more brighter, and that was the difference. But she couldn't, if she really wanted to get a lot of emotion in the voice, then when you don't have any technique, then you kind of press on the voice and it cracks, and it becomes hard to do something other than just a little popular song. Hard to do a score, which is, it's written with a lot of nuance, like an opera almost, and so that's when it became obvious.
And it is one of the greats of musical theatre, and not for nothing.
Yeah.
But it's really that particular performance by you that in many ways led to your becoming famous, isn't it? Not that you weren't anyway in certain circles, but it became known very quickly that the voice on the film soundtrack was yours.
Yes, and that's, of course, a double-edged sword, because there again they didn't want, and she didn't necessarily want it known that she was being dubbed. And I don't think she had accepted the part, thinking that she was going to be dubbed. So later on, she had to accept the fact that she had to be, but I think she thought that because the knowledge had gotten out, even though I didn't get credit, and ostensibly I wasn't supposed to say anything, but you can't control the world. I mean, everybody, the orchestra knew that I had sung, and people start whispering, and I didn't have to say a word, it was just sort of got to be general knowledge.
Truth will out, really.
Yeah, I guess. And so that she thought that perhaps she didn't get the Academy Award because of that. But I think it was because at that same Academy Award, there was another person who had been nominated by the name of Julie Andrews for Mary Poppins. And because she had not gotten the part originally in the movie, I think everybody was sort of on Julie's side, like, we're for you, you know. I think that, I hope it wasn't, I hope I didn't contribute to Audrey not getting the Academy Award, because I always thought that when I was doing a dubbing thing, it was really her performance that I was imitating. It wasn't my performance.
They're both great films and they're both great actresses, but as are you. And it's interesting that you should mention Julie Andrews, because obviously your next, that wasn't the end of your film career, although you weren't to do dubbing again, I think, because you were in The Sound of Music.
Right. If you didn't blink.
You're one of the nuns in the chorus, aren't you, who
right.
have concerns about Maria, is that right?
Sister Sophia.
And but how did it feel to be on the other side of the camera?
Well, I had been doing films all along. It wasn't that unknown to me. I mean, when I was a kid, I did a lot of extra work and a lot of little bit parts in the movies. But it was just really great to be able to really do something in a major movie, let alone a musical, that I felt good at, and I felt very excited about that.
I wanted to ask, of course, actually, about the move on from there would be actually your, not quite dubbing, but you moved into cartoon films in some senses, because you also worked with Julie again in a slightly a small role, but in 3 times over as the geese. Is that right, in Mary Poppins?
Right, yes.
How does animation differ from dubbing?
I think it depends upon if they've already filmed, if they filmed the segment beforehand. It's sort of like you do it to earphones, but usually if it's an animation, they haven't filmed it yet, and you just record it.
So you're there first, really. You're creating what they will then bring to life.
Right, and then they draw the voices accordingly.
How did it feel recording your own trio, though? That seems quite unusual to me.
Well, they just keep re-recording you, and you can you sing the low part, the middle part, and the high part. You just match your own to the earphones. You hear that voice that you've already recorded, and then you sing with that, and just to earphones. It's not that hard. It's fun.
Well, later on, the Disney Corporation used you again, didn't they, in Mulan?
Yes.
Singing the role of Grandma Farr.
Right, yeah.
That's much more recent. How was that for you?
Well, that was an interesting thing, because at that point I said I really didn't want to do a lot of dubbing anymore. I was doing so many things on my own that I didn't think that it was a good career move to do it. And then after a while, that when they kept coming back and saying, "Oh well, come on, you could do it." Finally, I said, "Well, I don't know. You let me listen to the person who's playing the part, the grandma." Well, it so happened that they had another person that had been hired to do the grandma's speaking voice. And I wanted to do the speaking voice myself too. I thought, well, why shouldn't you hire me as an actress and just for my singing voice? I'm an actress. Anyway, that didn't work. But so then, what happened was that then I recorded the songs that they wanted for this gal with a certain kind of look in my mind, because they showed me the storyboards of this Grandma Farr. I mean, it hadn't been filmed yet, her part, but they had the soundtrack. So I was seeing just the drawings of what Grandma Farr was going to be like. I said, well, I'm just going to just manufacture a voice that I think would go with this drawing. And I just improvised, and sort of, she had like no voice and no sound to her voice at all, but real old lady with with false teeth coming out like this, and so I just sang it that way, and that's when I got the part. But then what happened was that the actress that I had heard doing the vocal part was fired, and then they hired another actress to do the speaking part. What's her name? I forgot.
June Foray.
Yes, June Foray. And so then they hired her, and she was then kind of matching her speaking voice to my singing voice.
So you led the way on the character.
I guess. But then I was sort of mad at the end, thinking, well, why didn't they let me do the whole character again? Anyway, it worked out fine, and June Foray was fantastic. She always is. She's a wonderful. She's done a lot of voices.
Well, she's done lots of cartoons, hasn't she? She's the witch who occasionally fights Bugs Bunny. I know that.
Yes, she's just very, very talented. So anyway, that was fun.
Just to finish off then on cartoons, there's just one more I'd just briefly love to touch on, is when you worked with Gene Kelly in the semi-animated version of Jack and the Beanstalk.
Right.
Now, what were you playing in that, and how did that come about?
Well, that was just, there was nothing I didn't know. I mean, I knew who the character was. I don't think I even saw the storyboard. I didn't know how it was going to proceed. And they just asked me to sing it, and then I sang it, and then they created the character around that.
So it was one of the animated characters in it?
Yes, right.
Can you remember which character it was?
Well, I think it was the mother.
The owner of the cow in the first place?
Yeah, I've really forgotten that. Caught me off guard here. I haven't looked into that. I've forgotten who the character was, but they just gave me the song and they just said, sing this, and then there were certain character choices that I had made because of something they showed me, but then I just sang it the way I thought it should be sung, and then they made her movements around that. So.
It's interesting because, once again, this is all the acting part coming out of you. You're creating the characters you're putting yourself in their shoes and thinking your way through it, and then sort of manifesting that in the way the way you sing.
Right.
And then pleasingly with animation, they can really pick up on that and sort of take it further.
Right. So I really admire those animators, don't you? I mean, I think they're spectacular.
If you're happy, I'd love to talk to you about the other branch of your huge, amazing career, really, which is the shows that you've done, the more the musical theatre than the operatic side. But you went straight in that happy half form of operetta with The Girl in the Pink Tights by Sigmund Rogberg. Well, at the time, the late Sigmund Rogberg.
Right.
That was his last show, essentially, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, that was 1953, I think it was. Wasn't that about then?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's certainly the very early 50s, yes.
Yeah. I was still in California, and but I moved. I had just moved to New York, and then I got that show. It was really kind of fun. I left it because the show didn't last very long anyway, but I left the show before it was closed because I had won the Arthur Godfrey Talent Scouts on television, and I think it was also The Chance of a Lifetime was a show that they had here, and then when you won that, they had you on television then live for various performances, and then I had to then I was singing at the Latin Quarter, which is a big huge nightclub, and I would appear but singing classical things and entertaining the audience, and so I began to really work, and really do some stage things from the Girl in Pink Tights show, and that was kind of fun.
You had a problem with the costume in that though as well, didn't you?
You're reminding me something. Oh, it was they had us in these like straitjacket things, and I couldn't breathe, and I fainted dead. Was that
Yes.
what that? Yeah. Oh gosh, I have to read my book again.
Well, it's a pleasure to do
After you express it all, it's like, okay, I can forget all that now, and I have too much information. As a matter of fact, I think my brain is doing that for me. It sort of helps you forget certain things that are probably not relevant anyway.
Well, you moved on from that, and as you say, into a whole raft of television and radio appearances and sort of cabaret shows as well. But you also quite quickly picked up Rosabella in The Most Happy Fella by Frank Lesser.
Yes. And I started touring around the country with various shows, and that was, I think I went back to Los Angeles then and did Most Happy Fella with the San Bernardino Civic Light Opera. Started doing a lot of more Broadway type of shows, and ingenue parts, and just a lot more theater then.
Is that when you sort of got a taste for the Broadway style musical, would you say, or?
Yes, yes, and I had been doing that before too, but it was in Los Angeles, and the national press is not in Los Angeles, or it wasn't in those days. And
no, of course.
So nobody ever knew that I was doing that, except people that had come to see me and stuff. So it wasn't known at all. I wasn't really known, and in the rest of the world. But I got my feet wet doing a lot of musical theater things in Los Angeles, and then finally when I was here in New York, then I started doing the Broadway things. And then after I was here for a while, because my kids were young, it was kind of, I discovered it was kind of too hard for me to be in New York with my kids, and my husband had not really done major movies by that time, and he was then forced to come here and do things that were really not his bent. I mean, he became rehearsal pianist for Helen Tamira's in Plain and Fancy. He started working there, but he was a composer. You know, he wasn't really, although he played well, but he was not used to just being a rehearsal pianist and playing all the time, and his fingers would become just bloody when he came home, and he really had a hard time. But finally, he realized at that point that I was hoping that maybe I would be here in New York, and then I would go off and have an operatic career again in Europe. And we were on our way there, and then we all decided that it really wasn't good. He had to come back to Los Angeles and really do some more things, and then I came back here. We moved all the way back with the two kids and everything, because it just became too hard.
Well, yes, it's a very tough life on the road anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, then it worked out okay.
Well, you carried on in your musical theatre career, though, because you did actually then go on to play Anna in The King and I on stage.
Yes, and then I started doing more the music theatre things in Los Angeles and in the various venues there, and it was wonderful. I really loved doing that.
How did you find playing Anna up front, as it were? I mean, was it a different... I mean, because obviously on that occasion you're on stage all the time and in the costume. Obviously you knew the songs tremendously well, but it's a totally different game, isn't it, being on the stage?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a different energy, and it's a more, it's a more complete. You have to not only become the person in the whole show, but your whole mannerisms and everything, and then you have to sustain the show, going back and forth between speaking and singing, and it's a different kind of real focus, and it's wonderful. I mean, that's what I like.
And once again, you were in a dress, were you not, that had metal hoops in it, I think?
Yes. Well, at that point I had done the dubbing for Deborah Carr, and she and the studio lent me her costumes to do this stage performance out there. They were gorgeous costumes, but they were not designed to be useful on stage. and this wonderful hoop skirt which had metal rings that started at the waist at about maybe an inch apart, and then 2 inches, and then 3 inches. So by the time the rings got wider and bigger down to the bottom, there were these rings and rings and rings of. They used real. I think it was like real steel rings, and then they were tied together with brocade ribbon that was gorgeous. But the ribbon, it had gold threads in it. It was absolutely gorgeous. The result was that, of course, when you would bow or when you would like go down a little bit, the whole dress would just, or you sat down, the dress would just gently just collapse to the, and just sort of...
Like a concertina, yes?
Yeah, it was just sort of, it was the most fantastic thing to watch. But when you're walking around in it...
Or dancing.
It's attached, or dancing, it's attached to your waist, and it has this tremendous weight to it. And also, it was like, if I started to do the dance and had it around my waist, I mean, this whole skirt you couldn't stop the turning, because the skirt would keep on turning until you had to grab hold of something, and then it would whip you into shape to stop it. It was really incredible. But the thing was, it was too heavy, and so that when I got on stage wearing this, I just fainted dead away, because it just pulled down on my stomach.
Quite. It must have been awful.
Yeah, so I had to then put huge straps on it so that my shoulders were holding up the waist. It wasn't all at my waist level. And these huge brocade ribbons over my shoulder, which ruined the décolleté of the dress a little bit. I had to cover that up with, I don't know, what do you call it, fake netting and stuff, so that you couldn't, because otherwise it was supposed to be off the shoulders. And that's the beauty of the dress, so you see the full shoulder, But in the stage thing, I had to have these straps. That doesn't work. Anyway, we figured it out, and I was able to do it. But it's so much fun to dance in it. It dances for you. It just turns around. This, what is it?
Centrifugal. Yes.
Yeah, force. Is wonderful for dancing.
Particularly waltzes, of course, I suspect, which very much the order of the day with
yes.
Hammerstein.
Yes, right. And then, or polkas, where you're really jumping up and down. Yeah.
And did you meet Richard Rodgers?
I've met Richard Rodgers. I've sung for him. I've auditioned for him. He was not a nice man.
That is the popular view, yes.
Yeah, he was really... when I came back here and was doing, after I dubbed My Fair Lady, I came back here again to do My Fair Lady on stage. It was the first revival on Broadway after the show had closed on Broadway. And then the City Center did a revival of the show using a lot of the same people that were still around at that point. And let's see, why was I getting into this story?
Well, we started on Richard Rodgers, so.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I was doing that production, and Rodgers was then casting. I think it was No Strings. I guess that was his next movie. But in any case, I was so exhausted. I mean, when you're on stage and you're performing a show like that, and My Fair Lady is no slouch. I mean, it's really heavy work, and 8 shows a week, and then to go out and audition besides, it was just too hard. And I had said that I wouldn't go to the audition unless they came to the show first and could see whether I was right for the part or not. So I gave them free tickets to the show, assuming that it was Rodgers himself who was going to come. It turns out that he had just given the tickets to his secretary or something and hadn't come. So that when I went to audition, I'm standing there, and he says, well, why don't you sing me something from My Fair Lady? And I said, well, you just heard me do that. Is that relevant to the part you're casting? And he said, no, I wasn't there. It made me furious. Anyway, I was so exhausted. Why am I telling you this whole story?
I was asking about Richard Rodgers.
And, yeah. Oh, yeah. So then, so it made me very mad because that wasn't the deal as far as I was concerned, and because I was so tired. And anyway, so I did sing something then as an audition from My Fair Lady, and he said, well, my daughter, Mary, told me that you were just right for this part. Nevertheless, let's hear you sing something else. Obviously, he did, I wasn't right for the part at all, the character of the part or anything. But, I mean, that's kind of mean to then say, nevertheless, in spite of the fact that my daughter has said you were perfect for this, go ahead and sing something else. And he just, he didn't have a lot of niceness to him.
That's a very polite way of putting it.
That was why this whole long story. Sorry.
No, don't apologise. I mean, forgive me. It's all excellent and fascinating stuff. And it's interesting, isn't it, that you played Anna in The King and I, and then you went on to play Eliza Dolittle in My Fair Lady. All of these roles which you dubbed.
Yes.
What was it like approaching that? Because I know that you were able to discuss it with Julie Andrews.
Yes. Well, I was doing Sound of Music. Back in Los Angeles, when I went off to audition for My Fair Lady, and Julie, we were filming Sound of Music, and I went to her dressing room and asked her, give me some clues about a scene that I was particularly worried about, the slipper scene where she comes back in the second act and throws a slipper at him, and so she gave me some pointers there on the set, and then I was able to come back to New York and audition for it, and then got the part at City Center and did the show.
We moved from My Fair Lady, so we might as well do the triple, because you then went on to play Maria in a stage version of The Sound of Music in 1969. Yes,
well, I've done Maria many times on stage, and I've also done the Countess part too, and then I in Sound of Music I now do Mother Abbess.
So you've pretty much done the whole lot.
Yes, well, it's a wonderful show. You can graduate within it.
And how do you find? I mean, that's very interesting in its own right. Being in a show and then playing the different characters over time, does it give you different insight into how you might have played one of the other characters again? Or
oh, sure. Oh, yes. I think it gives you insight into the show from another perspective. Yeah, you feel like you really are in the inside of all the people once you've tried to play them all. I guess I didn't. I should have been young enough to play one of the kids and then graduated. That would have been spectacular.
You could have written a book just about your entire career in The Sound of Music. You've touched very delicately upon it. I mean, forgive me, as one gets older, you start playing different roles, and fortunately, there's still a raft of roles for women of different ages. It's not just the young ingenues, because you played an important part in a show called Taking My Turn in 1984. It's a very unusual show, really, about, well, I'm going to be rude, and when I say women of a certain age, I hope you won't be offended.
Right.
What was that like?
One doesn't get offended after a certain... you just happen to be alive, that's all. That was a wonderful experience. That was the original version of the show. I mean, that was the first time it had been presented, and it was filmed. Even though it was an off-Broadway show, it was filmed for television after we had closed, and that was good. It had a little bit of life beyond that. And that was it was a rather trying experience because I didn't have a good hook on who the character was and what I was supposed to be doing, and but finally I got myself together through various experiences, and
Well, I was going to ask, what it actually? How would you describe the piece, actually, for those people who won't have heard of it?
Well, it's really a review. I mean, first of all, there's no dialogue; it's all sung, but it's characters of different characters who have different aspects of. It was actually put together through collecting sayings that people said about what it was like to be getting old. And they formed all these sayings and made a play, and it was sort of like a very abstract meeting, as if it had been like group analysis where everybody was sharing their stories together, and the bitterness of getting old and what it's like, and the songs became like a celebration of life. But the thing is, in a review, you're on stage the whole total time, and it's really it was staged that way, and it was really great fun. It was wonderful, and it won a lot of awards here.
And 200 performances off Broadway, I think.
Yes, yeah, it was very nice, and very good people to work with, and very close. It was Maggie Whiting, and
she's the daughter of Richard Whiting, the composer, isn't
right?
Isn't she? That's right.
Right. Cissy Houston, who's the mother of Whitney Houston.
Oh gosh.
Whitney was just beginning to have a career at that point, and Cissy Houston was a mother, and she had I guess all her other kids. They had like a little home choir, and they would do gospel singing together. And Cissy was the mother, and she played one of the parts in Taking My Turn.
I wanted to move on further, actually, to talking about the sort of the range of parts available, because you were also Fräulein Schneider in Cabaret.
Yes, then I did Fräulein Schneider in Cabaret in various venues. And
it affected the way you sang, I think. Is that right?
Yes, I really had to belt full out on that. I had never really belted, although I had been teaching how to belt. I'd been studying a lot of fiber optics and realizing what that setup in the voice was, how you got that sound. Here on Broadway, you have to know how to belt, and the kids who are auditioning for roles can't just say, "Oh, I can't, I don't belt," or you limit your whole hiring
yes.
Range. Then, so I was very good at that, but I'd never really done it myself, and so finally I had to put my voice where my mouth was and learn how to do it. And John Cantor, the composer, said, "I'll change the keys. I'll do anything. It doesn't matter whether you belt or not, as far as I'm concerned, but I'll change the keys for you." So we were experimenting a lot, and yet it really turned out that I really had to belt. It was really set up that way, and so that was the first time I did that, and it was kind of traumatic, but worked out very well. It's a good thing to sort of be. Learn how to sing under fire like that.
You found the hidden Ethel Merman within you.
Yes, right, exactly. And it's also helpful in nowadays when I'm older. I think they don't want you to sing operatically or legit anymore on stage usually. So if I'm going to get hired to do some things, I better learn how to belt, and that's what I did. But I've tried not to lose anything else too, and that's good. As a matter of fact, I pride myself in the fact that when I teach, I can really teach with the empirical knowledge about all these different kinds of singing, and then I can also still demonstrate, and also do in my own concerts. I can, not have to lose one voice to gain the other. You can do it all if you kind of know what you're doing.
I also wanted to talk about follies now, because you were talking about the way people are now expected to sing in different ways, and less legit was a lovely word you used there.
Yeah.
You played Heidi, who's the woman who had been singing operetta when she was younger. In fact, it's takes us all the way back.
Right, and that's a really it's a little operetta scene there. Yes. that I did here on Broadway, and then I've done it several other times in other places too. It's a wonderful role.
Well, it sort of gives you full circle back with the girl in the pink tights. But
yes, you're right. Come to think of it, yeah.
But I also wanted to say that in your book, you're absolutely right, because you had very strong views when you took the role about making that character come to life and making that song really mean something. It's not just an operetta song or operetta-style song thrown in. But
right.
You were very interestingly saying that you wanted to, illustrate something that was happening in the plot.
Yes. I had the director, I had sort of a fight with him at first. I wanted to do it a certain way out of concept of this, because the scene is really subliminally, it's two sides of her younger self, sort of like an echo of what she has been and herself on stage. And they have a dialogue, and within the show there's sort of a, I guess you call it a conceit, that that's the term. It's sort of like the setup of the way people relate to each other. These ghost characters, or the younger characters, come on all the time, but only in the second act, when Heidi comes on, does she actually, the younger character comes on, but then Heidi actually sees her, and they really have a kind of a contact together. And I wanted that to be much more stated when I came to the production, and the director almost didn't let me do it, and I said, "Oh, please let me try." And then after I had been doing it for about a week, Sondheim then came to see me, and I didn't really know that he was in the audience that night. I was just dead tired, and I had been doing a TV show the day, and I was going to cancel, and blah blah blah, which is a good thing for teaching people. You should never cancel your nighttime job here. Anyway, so
it's the night Stephen Sondheim will be in. Yes.
There he was at the end of the show, and he was waiting with open arms, and he said to me, "I was trying to get that out. Oh, this was..." Anyway, he was very approving. It was,
you got a rare hug from Stephen Sondheim.
Yes, I got a hug from him.
Yeah. Makes you very individual, if I may say.
Yes, I think so too. I felt very honored.
So the last item I'm going to ask you about, of course, is your one-woman show, if that's okay, Marni, because Marni Nixon, the voice of Hollywood, I think.
Yes. Well, I have been doing this show. Unfortunately, I started doing it just at the time when I started doing a lot of Broadway, and I couldn't ever do a long-term run of my own show. So I've plugged it in and done it in several places around the country, not for a long time, but now it's been, I don't know how many years, like I've been doing it for a little while now, and I think I just have to change it a little. Now I'm going to start to do it again, but it'll be somewhat different, I think, just with some new material.
Well, as the story changes and progresses, of course, because your career is still...
Yeah, and but it's really what I like is that it's a show. It's not just a nightclub entertainment. It's really a show, but it's just me in it, and so I'm working on various projects of that sort.
Well, I can't think of any show I'd rather see, to be honest.
Well, thank you. My goodness, that's great. It takes a lot of work and investigation, and what is dramatic and what is not, and how much it has to be balanced. How much singing? How much do you want to be revealed? What's entertaining? How much can I sing of the old stuff anymore? You just have to be very. You have to get the balance going, and then I think it's very worthwhile to do a one-woman show.
And it's something I'll never do.
Are you a performer anyway?
Not in any real sense, no.
Really?
This is as far as I meet the greats through this. So, and forgive me, Marni, I'm going to say today I have. Thank you very, very much indeed for speaking with us. I mean, everything you've said so far has been absolutely interesting, and it's been a real delight to speak to you.
Oh, I thank you so much. It's a delight. It's a delight to speak to you too. It's nice to have it in front of me to kind of go through again in my mind. It's wonderful.
And just to say, we wish you every success for your continuing career.
Thank you.
And I look forward to hearing much more from and about you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Musical talk. Well, that was the legendary Marni Nixon, and I have to say what a very generous woman she was, as you may have heard from some of the outtakes last week and again from this week. She was so generous with her time and so generous with herself. She was so open about her life, and it was a delight to speak to her. I wish her every success. And remember, her book, I Could Have Sung All Night, is widely available. That's her autobiography, and there's much more meat on the bone. If you've enjoyed these interviews, do find a copy of that. And rather splendidly, she's still giving concerts and recording songs. If you go onto iTunes, you can find her recently recorded Christmas song. It's called My Christmas Card to You, written by Madeline and Mitchell Stone. And you'll see that her voice is as clear as ever. And do pop along to her website, www.marninixon.com. Now, I did say last week that there's a piece of trivia attached to Marni Nixon, and that's that her first son, Andrew Gold, who was born in 1951, was the first human voice to be heard on Mars. Well, let me tell you how. He's actually a musician and songwriter in his own right, and has had several top 10 hits, including Lonely Boy and Thank You for Being a Friend, and here in Britain with Never Let Her Slip Away, which was covered later on by Undercover, who are a British dance group. However, and I find this absolutely amazing, when the Mars Pathfinder space probe finally reached Mars on 1996, it had something called a wake-up call. And that wake-up call was a piece of music called Final Frontier, which is a theme tune from an American television series called Mad About You. And it was sung by Andrew Gold. A little bit of musical trivia there for you. Well, with that out-of-this-world piece of musical trivia, I think we've reached the end of this week's episode of Musical Talk. I hope you've enjoyed these two episodes when we spoke to the wonderful Marni Nixon. My thanks go out to her. Do tune in again next week for something completely different about the world of musical theatre that we all so very much love. But until that point, go off and do lots of exciting things and report back to me. Goodbye.
Ta-ta. Olive oil.
Goodbye.
This programme was presented and produced by Thos Ribbits, and my thanks go to Tim Saywood, who was the sound engineer. Copyright Musical Talk 2010, except for the songs where the copyright persists with the creators. And now for some musical outtakes.
Okay.
Hello, Marni. How are you again?
Fine, thank you.
And you'll be pleased to know at this end we lived up to our British reputations by having a cup of tea.
Oh, okay, all right.
So everything all right for you again?
Yes.
Lovely. Should we sort of carry on? I think you were just
Yes.
about to fascinate me, I think, with your recollections of the close working relationship and sort of systems you developed with Deborah Carr.
Yes, it was... Excuse me.
Just taking a little time out. How are you for time?
I'm fine.
Oh, if you are?
Yeah, just we can go on and on. I guess there's what I had on my calendar didn't happen. I forgot to. It was probably an earlier notation that I forgot to cross out, and in my mind I had no conflict. And then when I saw it today, I thought, oh my gosh, he's coming for a lesson, and it's too late to cancel him, but I must have. So he didn't show up, so that's it.
It's come out right for us. I'm very happy, so thank you
Yeah,
very much.
yeah.
Well, if you are happy to talk, I'll be delighted to carry on, because, forgive me, you're being fascinating.
Sure. Oh, good. I'm just jabbering away. You have to tell me
no.
if I'm making sense.
You underestimate yourself, I can assure you.
Oh,
You had a problem with the costume in that, though, as well, didn't you?
yes. See, I'm trying to remember that.
It made you
Remind
faint,
me that
didn't it?
story.
It made
Oh,
you
the
faint.
fainting.
Never good in a costume, I think.
Yeah, right. that was that wasn't Saint. We had. You're reminding me something. I can't remember.
Oh, right.
Was it the? It was the. They had us in these like straitjacket. I'm getting too diffuse here. I'm going on and on and on.
Are you still happy to talk? Or
Sure, yeah. As long as I think I'm losing my concentration here, but you keep me on it, and as long as you want. There's another call, but I'm just not going to answer. So maybe
you're very kind. Thank you.
It'll just.
I won't keep you too much longer.
No, it's all right.
So thank you. That's the end of the recording part. I just want to say, really, genuinely, thank you very much, Marni. Is there anything else you wanted to add yourself? Or are you okay?
Gee, I can't think. Am I going to get a copy of this?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Good.
What I'm going to do is we'll edit it, of course, and then what I'll do is, because I've got your email address, I'll let you know when we're likely to broadcast it. And would you like to hear it before we broadcast it to make sure you're happy with it?
No, it's all right. I'll trust you.
Well, very kind.
Now where is it going to be broadcast? You'll put that all in your email, will you?
We will indeed, yes. I mean, it's on the webcast, on a podcast rather, and I'll give you all the details and things like that.
And so would it come? Does that mean it's going to be, anybody can get it in any country? And
they can indeed. Every country, and it stays online as well, so it's not just for a week. It will, once it goes up, anyone can listen to it, for future reference, really.
Oh, wow.
It's
is
a very small slice of eternity.
Oh, my gosh, it'll be on there forever. What did I say? So. I should have spoken in more eternal terms. Or
oh, well, you were already celestial, if I may.
Oh, gosh.
I have to say it's been great. You've given us so much time, so thank you very much indeed. I mean, it's been, forgive me, absolutely drippingly fascinating all the way through.
Thank you so much. And then I'll hear from you. And I thank you very much.
Oh, was that all right? I'm very grateful.